relationship. You know, there's the enemies, and there's opponents, and there's strangers, and then there's acquaintances, and then there's resources, and then there's friends, and then there's good friends, and then there's best friends, and then there's your spouse, and then there's God. Okay, so this is the problem for men. From here to here, men can consider that a friend. What do you mean he's your friend? You guys like compete like crazy. Yeah. What's the problem? But you yelled at him last time you had dinner with him, and you yelled at each other about that doctrine all night long. Yeah. Okay. I mean, you know, men can literally get in a fist fight with each other and then go to lunch. Like, but how? Because we're men. Man up, woman. Right? Whoa, man. Whoa. And this is my problem. This is my problem right here. Everything from, I mean, there's enemies. There are enemies. And dumb preacher me, right? I'm like, but they could come around. There's hope, right? My wife is all the way over here. This is friend from here to here. And that's not negative to her. That's normal. That's normal woman. It's like anything less than this is enemy or frenemy. Okay? It's just we're wired different than that. Okay? So we're not the same. And so I'm not understanding. I'm like, okay, but I've never met them, so they could be a friend, you know? Right. And I had to learn this. I had to learn this about me. I didn't understand, and honestly, a long, long time, I didn't understand the difference between a resource and a friend, and those aren't the same things. A resource is like, you know, a resource is my mechanic who I'm friendly with. And when I go and get my car worked on, we might chat for a half hour about stuff, you know, because we're friendly. And yet, my mechanic's probably not going to, you know, hey, you want to come over Sunday afternoon and fix my car in my driveway real quick, you know, and he's not going to do that because he's my resource, not my friend. Okay? And so that there's a difference there. And in ministry, and you need to understand this, we get upset when we are someone's resource and they don't make us a priority, and we just didn't understand where we were in that. You understand what I'm saying? There's nothing wrong with having resources of people that are resources to you, and there's nothing wrong with being a resource to people. And people that are resources to each other can often become more than that. Okay? But you just need to understand where the relationship is. I could get upset. I used to be this way when I'm young in ministry, and I'd hear someone was passing by, and I thought they were a friend because every time they need something, they call me. And then they come through town, and I found out they stayed in town 3 days a month ago and never even text me, you know. And I'm like, man, I thought we were friends, you know, and I could get upset about that. And I have to understand it. I had to learn that sometimes I'm a friendly resource. And it's okay if you understand that. You have to be okay with that. But my wife struggles with that. And I don't mean she struggles with that now as much, now that we learned this and understand this a little more, but she does struggle with being people's resources more than I do, you know. And I think most wives are that way. And so what makes things move here this direction is when we become vulnerable. And what makes things move this direction is when we're betrayed. So someone who is an opponent can become a spouse or a best friend, or a spouse can often become an opponent. You know, I've seen that too. But we move this way when we make ourselves, this is what the verse said, a man that hath friends must show himself friendly. That is, to develop that friendship, they have to be able to see the vulnerable side of you, the bad side. Okay? And if you are betrayed at some point, it goes the other way. And we used to be good friends until, and now I don't trust them. They're now just a resource. That happens. And by the way, it's okay that people, it's okay that people who are good friends today, 20 years from now, are just resources. And I don't mean that in a negative way. Like, in other words, it's okay to accept that relationships change. You really should accept that. Relationships do change. Different seasons of life, different areas, different, you know, interests and things diverge and converge, and, you know, relationships are dynamic. Your marriage relationship's dynamic. It's not static, and that's part of the problem a lot of men have in marriage is they think it's static, and it's never static. You have to continue to invest yourself, pursue her. You know, it's not just like, well, we're married, you know, so it's always going to be that way. Well, it's not always that way. Not if you're not investing. And by the way, what the problem most women have in feeling like their husband is not as invested in the relationship is that they feel like that they make themselves incredibly vulnerable to him, and he does not make himself vulnerable to them. He's a closed book. He doesn't open up. And because he's not vulnerable, she interprets that as an indication that he's not invested in this relationship. He's withdrawing. And that's not always the case.